starting in alphabetical order, we have Sheriff Christina Corpus of San Mateo County with a tenure in public service dating back to 1995. Currently, she serves as the 26th Sheriff of San Mateo County, a position she assumed in January of 2023. Her career began in 2002 as a correction officer in San Mateo County. She progressed through various roles, eventually hold rank of captain and chief of police. Sheriff Corpus has extensive experience in diverse units like community policing, school resource, and K-9. She's also a trailblazer in fostering diversity with law enforcement, demonstrated by initiating the first Women in Law Enforcement boot camp and symposium, an issue that we know a lot of women struggle with, the physical fitness that tends to be a barrier. Academically, she holds a bachelor's in criminal justice and a master's in law enforcement and public safety leadership. Notably, Sheriff Corpus is the first female and one of the first Latina sheriffs in California. Her approach to law enforcement is marked by a commitment to humane, responsive community policing, emphasizing transparency, integrity, and stakeholder engagement. Her focus spans a range of community concerns, including criminal justice reform, mental health, and homelessness. We then have the opportunity to also speak with Chief Bisa French from Richmond, California's police department, someone whose career I've been following for quite some time. Chief French began her career with the Richmond Police Department, where she currently serves as chief, in 1998. As a young officer, she formed meaningful relationships with community members as a community police officer, a field training officer, and a bicycle patrol officer. She worked as a detective in the property crimes unit, family services unit, where she had a passion for advocating for young people. She was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2006. In 2011, French was promoted to lieutenant. She worked with various stakeholders to include the Contra Costa County, STAND, and Families Free of Violence, and Community Violence Solutions. In 2013, she was promoted to the rank of captain, becoming the first African-American and Latina captain in the Richmond Police Department and the youngest person ever to hold those positions. After 3 years, she was promoted to the rank of assistant chief and became responsible for overall operations. She also worked on programs centered around racial justice and equality in the criminal justice system. She was appointed to interim chief in 2019 and was hired as a permanent chief in 2020. She's the first female chief in Richmond Police Department's 110-year history. She has a bachelor's of arts degree in public administration and a master's in human resources from Golden Gate University. She is a graduate of Perth's Senior Management Institute Policing and serves on the Community Policing Committee for IACP. She's also a board member of several organizations in Contra Costa and the Richmond Police Department Athletic League. She's a lifetime member of NAACP, and she continues to live in the Bay Area and is a proud Richmond resident. She has a husband and 3 children. Our next featured chief is someone I have also been following since she was in Miami, is Chief Sharice Goss. And she is the police chief of North Miami Police Department with over 3 decades of experience. Her journey commenced in '93 when she joined the Miami Police Department and became a dispatcher, and then progressed through the ranks, culminating in a retirement in August 2023 and becoming the first assistant chief of police. Throughout her career, Goss managed a diverse array of assignments, including field operations, administration, and criminal investigations. She also notably ran the Field Operations Division, which is the largest unit in the Miami Police Department. Chief Goss's credentials in academia include a Master's of Science in Organizational Leadership, a Bachelor of Public Administration, and an associate degree in Criminal Justice. She is a graduate of FBI National Academy, the Senior Management Institute of Police, and the Southern Policing Institute Command Development course. She's recognized for her leadership, and she's honored with awards from the Legacy magazine, South Florida's 50 Most Powerful Black Leaders, and Woman of the Year Award from the NYPD Haitian American Law Enforcement Fraternal Organization. She's a member of NAWLEE, Perth, and IACP, and is here representing NAWLEE as one of their executive board members. Our next esteemed panelist is Lynn Holland. And so we have a gamut of police chiefs, sheriffs, and international policing represented on our panel. Lynn Holland serves as ISATAP's Senior Law Enforcement Advisor for the Engaging Multinational Police Women of Equality and Rights, otherwise known as Empower. Over the course of her domestic and international law enforcement career, Lynn has played a critical role in the establishing greater inclusion of women in law enforcement. She was chosen as the first female officer from the US to attend specialized training at the Metropolitan Police New Scotland Yard. Lynn became the first woman to serve on the executive management team for ISATAP and for the Haitian National Police Initiative. Her international experience includes leading the Bosnian program to assist women and men victimized by rapes as an act of war. She was selected to be on the elite law enforcement entry team into Kosovo, where she served as a human rights investigator assigned to high-profile cases of massacres and torture of adults and children in the Balkans. Lynn was instrumental in creating the post-conflict Kosovo Police Academy. She's a recognized leader in the security sector on reform and is a subject matter expert for the United Nations and the United Institute of Peace. Ms. Holland serves on leadership positions with sections and committees at the IACP, NOBLE, and she's earned a master's degree as a Bush Fellow of the George H.W. Bush School of Government and Public Service from Texas A&M University. So as you can see, we have a very esteemed panel, and I can't wait to dive in. We will start with Chief Goss, who's indicated to us that because of prior commitments, she has to answer her questions first so she can go on to her other commitments that she has today. So Chief Goss, welcome. How are you?
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to Miami, everybody. Bringing you greetings from sunny South Florida. Thank you all for having me today. I do apologize for having to leave early. Unbeknownst to us, some of the female police chiefs were being recognized today at an event for International Women's Day. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to hear that. Please do share some pictures with that so we can share it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Chief, can you describe the challenges and triumphs that you faced as a woman in your role?
Sure. I would say that some of the challenges are not being taken as seriously as some of our male counterparts, especially as I was going through the ranks. So I think it's important to make sure that we as women are doing our part, right? And not just expecting anything, but that we are head and shoulders with our male counterparts. So I think that is one of the issues. I would also say that just ascending through the ranks, you know, when you start, especially even from line supervision as a sergeant, the distinction between being one of the guys or girls versus ascending through the ranks, because obviously there are different responsibilities, different roles, and, you know, having to discipline perhaps someone that you have grown up in the department with. So those are some of the challenges. I think that also sometimes feeling that, you know, you have to take on a certain persona and prove yourself in so many ways, when the fact of the matter is that we are worthy to be in these positions. And so not having to change who you are, but to be true to yourself.
Excellent point. And a lot of our chiefs have discussed how they had to overcompensate either by overeducating themselves or having more experience to be comparable to their colleagues. So our next question, how do you balance the dual expectation of being a role model for women and people of color and the broader responsibilities of your position? You're not only a woman, you're a woman of color, you're Black, you're of Haitian descent. So how does that all play into your role?
Sure. I think certainly you're pulled in a lot of different directions. And again, I think it is just being true to yourself, making sure that I represent any organization that I'm a part of well, keeping that in mind at all times, and just being available to people. Right. I think that sometimes when certain people ascend to these different levels of leadership in their agencies, we forget what it is like to be an officer, a sergeant, you know, on the road and that sort of thing. So I think being available, being visible to the community, and just being able to give back, to mentor, you know, to provide guidance. You know, a lot of things that I do is to give back, to make sure that we are representing women well, even so much as giving back for promotional exams, that sort of thing, offering books that I've received. One of the things that I do annually is put together a women's empowerment event. So we're having that soon coming up. So I think I just try to make sure that I am represented in all of these different arenas and that I'm giving a piece of myself to each of them and representing them in a positive light.
I like you mentioned the women's empowerment event.
Yes.
Because men tend to network in areas where women sometimes may not feel as welcome, right? They may go to a bar or a golfing event. How do you recommend that women have access to those networks and be able to tap into available training? You've had a lot of the training that are required for chiefs positions. What suggestions do you make for women specifically on that?
So specifically on that, I'd say to make sure that you're networking. One of the things that we make sure, we have even a group chat on WhatsApp where we can kind of provide different information that's going on, different classes or courses that may be happening, different events, opportunities to network. It's interesting that you ask about the women's empowerment because I encountered last year where there were several men that were a little offended by the fact that they could not actually attend the event. We did a poll from the attendees and the attendees said, no, we'd like to keep it exclusive to women. And just this week, I had a chief from another department say, you know, I'm a little bit offended. What if it were the reverse? And I told him, well, the fact of the matter that it is the reverse for us each and every day. You know, this is one day that we're going to celebrate women and they want to be able to be free to discuss matters that are exclusive to women so that we can be a voice and a support for each other. So it's interesting because they certainly do want to, you know, partake in this event. So that part is interesting, but I think just more importantly, making sure that we have a network of people. We have over 200 women in our chat group. We just put out encouraging words, you know, affirmations, that sort of thing.
And I love that you mentioned the group chat. When I started this work, it was in 2016, and I was helping women that had failed the police academies. And I found that the group chat was really helpful for them in asking questions.
Yes.
They may not have individuals in their family that are cops or have friends that are cops. And there were so many things that they didn't know that we might not have thought that might be an issue. So the group chat is an excellent, excellent idea.
It certainly is.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. It's a really good idea, and it creates this community, right? This camaraderie that police officers normally have.
For sure.
And now I know you're pressed for time. Go ahead.
No, I'm fine for a few minutes. And what I was going to say is we even take it as far as having in-person meetups. Like we've met like during the Christmas holiday, we met at Top Golf. We'll do different things so that you also have that human contact as well. But certainly just from that group, I have people contact me and ask me different questions. Do you know someone I can get, you know, assistance with promotional exams from? You know, can you recommend someone that has gone through this sort of situation? So I think it's really good for us to remain connected to one another.
It is, especially when there's so much that you may not know, like what kind of assignments are necessary for leadership roles, what kind of training you should go after. I myself didn't learn till much later in my career about SMIP or the FBI National Academy.
Sure.
So your guidance is excellent on that. I will ask you one more question so we can have you out of here within 10 minutes. Time total. What advice would you give young women of color aspiring to leadership roles in law enforcement?
Sure. Well, one of the things I would definitely say, and I always tell people this, is to invest in yourself, right? I think as women, we will invest in everything else, you know, whether it be travel, fashion, you know, whatever it is. And I think that is a part, you know, you have to invest in yourself and support yourself, encourage yourself. So I think that is one. I think continuing your education is very important. One of the things that I never wanted to have said to me is, oh, well, you would have been a good candidate, but you didn't have this. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't have that. So I put myself in a position that I said that whatever position I apply for, it's not going to be because I don't have the NA or because I don't have SMIP. And I do realize that some people don't have the opportunity to be exposed to so many of these trainings. But what I would say is to make yourself marketable, for sure. Establish yourself a network. I remember when I was going through a chief position prior, I had a group text with several of the leading police chiefs. We were in a group chat and they were giving me advice, telling me, no, don't accept this, no, I don't think you should take that, this is a question that you need to ask. So again, just having that support. So I would also just say to make sure that you're creating a network. So invest in yourself, be marketable, and create a network. Sometimes we're a little apprehensive about asking for help. It's okay to ask for help. If you don't know something, you have a network of women that are here ready to provide assistance to you. I would say reach out and ask for assistance.
It's excellent advice. And I actually had an opportunity to chat to Lynn Holland, who we'll talk to later. And we discussed the same thing, right? About getting the educational attainment and also
Yes.
Making access available to ourselves if it wasn't offered. She and I both paid for training out of our pocket when it wasn't offered by our agencies.
Exactly.
Because it was required.
Exactly. That is
Yeah.
a good point. And sometimes they will tell you, we may not be able to pay for this course for you, but we will give you the time off. No problem. I'll pay for it because I'll pay for, a certain amount on a pair of shoes or a handbag. So certainly I am going to always invest in me. So yeah, that has happened several times.
Excellent advice. Thank you. And now, any closing comments as a chief and as a board member of NAWLEE that you'd like to make to our cohort?
Absolutely. I would just like to say thank you again. I am going to stay on just with earbuds in because I really want to hear from the other panelists. I just want to tell everybody happy Women's International Day to everyone. Celebrate yourselves, celebrate your achievements. And then as a board member for NAWLEE, it's been an enlightening experience to be able to make an impact on so many women and to be exposed to so many interviews, trainings, and everything that is going on. NAWLEE does a phenomenal job of providing support to women. 30 by 30, you all have been phenomenal. I brought you to Miami Police Department. I've brought you to North Miami Police Department. The work that you do is invaluable. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you. And I wanted to add a caveat. Social media could be used as a tool for networking. And I became aware of your career through social media, started following you, and it became to almost where I felt I knew you personally, right? So once
good.
It was, follow the careers that you're interested in and see what they're doing in their trajectory. So thank you so much for being inspiration for me, and congrats on becoming chief.
Thank you so much. And we are always here, whatever you need, however I can assist you all, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Chief. And
Thank
I know you'll
you.
stand by. Have a great meeting and send us pictures, please.
Yes, I will. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. So moving on to our next panelist. This question is for Chief French and Sheriff Corpus. You both have signed on to the 30 by 30 initiative. Thank you so much. I have relationships with you not only through 30 by 30, but also at my other job where I work at the Center for Policing Equity. You're very innovative. You get involved with the community. How do you navigate the intersection of gender and race in a predominantly male-dominated and racially homogenous field? Let's start in alphabetical order. We'll go with Sheriff Corpus.
Yeah, I think back to when I first started, and there weren't very many women at the sheriff's office, and I had a lot of challenges, and especially because I was, I wore makeup and I looked like, I was feminine, and so I always had to really prove myself and work harder, and so I think back to the obstacles that I had, and so like in 2014, that's why I created the Women's Boot Camp, which is a 6-week boot camp that we provide to women. And because I didn't have any family or friends that were in law enforcement. And so it was really kind of shocking for me to kind of go through all the obstacles. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I was a little naive to how difficult it was going to be. And then I think about supporting women. And what I can tell you is when we, put on our social media about joining the 30 by 30, I received a lot of negative kind of comments on there. And I was taken aback, and they were all obviously from men who thought you need to put, the ability and, people's experiences before gender. And, for me, women bring something special to law enforcement that men just can't. And so, it's still up to, even today, it's still challenging. But, some of the things that, I think of how, we counteract that is showing the value that and the differences that women bring to law enforcement. So, for instance, we have a women leaders in law enforcement. It's a conference that happens annually, and I'm sending mails for the first time, that we've never sent mails to those to those conferences, because I think it brings value to show what women bring, and really showcase the attributes and the contributions that we bring to law enforcement. And so it's one of these things where getting men, our male counterparts, to understand and to appreciate the women that we have and what we bring. And I think, as the chief said, we always have to work harder to prove ourselves, go that extra mile to prove ourselves, just to sometimes be compared to, the average Joe, so to speak. And some of the things that, we can do as women is really support each other, and really highlight all the contributions that we bring to law enforcement. So it is challenging, and to this day it still is, which still surprises me, with just all the focus on really having more equity in law enforcement. But what I can tell you is that I think all of us are just more aware and bringing more awareness to we as women, and the strength and the resilience that we have, and what our abilities truly are. And just as some of the women on the panel, in the 176 years of the sheriff's office, I was the first woman to even run for sheriff. So it says a lot, but it also says a lot of how much work we have ahead of us. So, some of the things that we're trying to do, at least at the sheriff's office, is I'm looking at, going to some of our substations and realizing that there's no women's locker rooms in some of our substations, right? And so, remodeling those, and then also, for the first time, we're doing a childcare center. So, I think about how hard it was for me to be a mom, and try and juggle my career, and then having to take my kids, where when you start at 6 a.m, there's no childcare centers that are open. So I'm excited that we're going to be launching a childcare center that would support a 12-hour shift. So be open from 5 a.m. until 7 p.m, and at a very low cost for our law enforcement personnel. And I'm excited about that. And those are just things that we have to, I think, just bringing more awareness to all the contributions and attributes, and that women bring is really important, and not standing down to this rhetoric. Well, you should base, not hire just based off of gender, but based off of the ability. And then I go back and say, we do have women that are law enforcement officers, and that are do an outstanding job. And a lot of times we just bring something very different. And so I think bringing this awareness and having panels like this is so pivotal and important and imperative to bring that awareness.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that negative pushback, right? When I first started my work with working with women in the park to train them to pass the test, I put it on the union's webpage, and the automatic response was, "Oh, great, another affirmative action program." But I don't know how preparing women to pass the same exam that the men were passing was affirmative action. We weren't advocating for changing the test. We were merely preparing them to pass the same test that men do. And men get together all the time and work out in the gym. So we struggle in in that perception, right? That bringing in a more gender diverse workforce is somehow weakening policing when they're passing the same exams as men. So have you thought of how to address that feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, I mean, we do that by, going back out and showing what highlighting the women in our organization and everything that we bring, and counteracting that negative, you know, negative rhetoric, because it's offensive. It truly is. And it is a male dominated field. And I can tell you that, in California, at least, our testing processes are so outdated. You have to jump over a 6-foot wall. And so, I'm 5'2", and, my upper body strength wasn't, great, but I learned how to climb over the wall, like to walk up the wall and get over. But then I think back, and it's like, we don't really want our law enforcement officers going over a fence, because it's proven to be extremely dangerous, because law enforcement officers have been killed because there's usually a gun or something waiting on the other side. And so I always go back and try and push back to post and say, can we look at how we really gauge on how somebody qualifies to be a law enforcement officer? Because I always say that you can train somebody to be a law enforcement officer, but it takes somebody with a good heart. And you can't train somebody to have a good heart. And if they don't have that, then there are going to be problems. And to be passionate and compassionate, I think is something that is so valuable to our profession. And I think that sometimes compassion is interpreted as being like weak or soft, and it's not. I always say that we're guardians of the community, and a guardian takes care of everybody, and guardians aren't soft. They're more resilient. And so, it's that culture change, right? And it's going to take a while. But we have to start somewhere. And so those are the kind of some of the things that we're doing, and ways that we're trying to really support women in law enforcement, and making it exciting for women, and knowing that you could be a mom and have a family, and also, be an outstanding law enforcement officer. So those are, I think that's so important for us to tell our stories, and to show other women that it can be done. And don't second guess us as women leaders, because we are strong, and we are resilient, and we have grit. And and I always thank the males in the profession for giving me that extra push all the time when I was told no. And I always thought, I'm going to prove them wrong, and I know that I could do this. And so it just made me work even harder.
Thank you, and congrats on opening the child care center. We've been following that, and I think you would be the third agency once that gets up and running. And kudos to California. Your legislators are presenting a national bill on trying to provide child care for law enforcement. So lots of good work happening in California. Moving on to Chief French. Same question. You signed on to 30 by 30. You're also with CPE. How do you navigate that intersection of gender and race in this male-dominated field that we're in?
Sure. Good morning, Yvonne, and everybody else from sunny California. Not raining today. So thank you for having me. And like the sheriff said, navigating race and gender can be tricky and challenging. But I learned early on to approach it as a learning opportunity. So instead of assuming any ill intent from people, and this was learned, I had to learn to get to this part. Instead of assuming any ill intent, I actually approach it as, very inquisitive. So for example, when I became the captain, and I was the only woman in the room with other captains and deputy chiefs and the chief, I used to get really frustrated with some of the conversations we had, because my viewpoint seemed to be so different from the others that on certain topics. I could specifically remember a conversation about promotions and the difference in how the men in the room talked about, the readiness of female candidates compared to the readiness of male candidates. And I specifically remember, and I caught it in the moment. I was probably a little bit too emotional the way I expressed myself about it, but they were like, oh, the so-and-so, the male candidate, oh, he's a quick learner, he'll get it, he'll, be able to learn very quickly. But the woman candidate wasn't ready yet. She needed more time. And it's like, wait a minute, they have the same experiences, they have the same kind of background, but she needs some more time, but he'll pick up on it. And that's not fair. And so being able to call them on it. And like I said, I had to learn to temper my emotional response, like, wait, because it immediately triggered my response. Whereas they were like, what I learned was there wasn't any ill intent by them. I think it was just more of a unconscious bias that they had. And so learning to be more inquisitive and ask questions. Well, why do you think about this person in this way and this woman in this way? And can you see how that can be biased? Or do you think that she might be able to pick it up just as easily as he may be able to pick it up? And so when I learned to do that, then we were able to have some really honest conversations about what was going on and how we were preparing our women in our department. And so that's really how I approach my work. I mean, the same could be approached with gender issues, and the same has been approached with different gender issues too. I ask questions and help people to challenge their own thinking about things and try not to judge. A lot of times we get very defensive and we might judge, their response, and that's automatically puts people on the defensive. And so it kind of doesn't allow for that conversation to happen in a non-threatening way. So believe me, I had to over time learn this approach, but I wanted to learn this approach because I wanted to be able to have those honest conversations and really challenge people's thinking.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm sure that you received the same feedback as I did. I became a chief when I had about 19 years on the job, and the comments in the newspaper articles were like, how old is she? I mean, is that old enough to be a chief, right? But I didn't see those same comments with chiefs that were actually younger than me. So pointing that out, right, the inherent bias in that, where people may not be even aware that they're comparing men and women differently, is excellent. Now, how do we provide an education on that there are these biases ingrained in people when they're comparing men and women? What do you suggest on that within your own workforce?
So I think it's, for me, it's just been one person at a time, one conversation at a time, and, hoping that that person will take that conversation to others. They learn something and they grow. And so, we really try to turn to the leaders of our department and, those that, they might not accept something willingly from me, but when we start new programs, or if I'm trying to start new initiatives, then really what I try to do is bring in those leaders in the department. And they might not be leaders because of their position or rank, but the ones that I know that get a lot of attention from our rank and file, and have those conversations so that they can be pushed out into the larger realm of our department.
Thank you. And a question that I asked Chief Goss, describe the challenges and triumphs that you faced, particular to being a woman in your role.
Oh gosh, I don't think we have enough time.
It'd have to be much longer.
Yes. But I'll just say, the challenges in this role, again, you mentioned, and the question was about a predominantly a male-dominated workforce, and racially homogeneous workforce. And really what we want to say is it's a white male-dominated field. And so what I had to learn and accept, and not necessarily accept, but just understand that there are going to be people in my department, people out in the community that don't believe still in this day and age that a woman, especially a woman of color, should be in my position. And so I can't focus my attention on them, and that's not my issue, it's their issue. So some of the challenges that I face are, being challenged by some people in my workforce. And the thing is, you can't let those things slide by. And I'm not saying you got to make a big deal in front of a lot of people, but you got to call people when they challenge you. And it might be in public, and it depends on the circumstance, but you can't let little things slide because you are the leader of the organization and people are looking at how you are going to respond. And so I make sure that I try to temper my emotion and not respond emotionally. If I have to take some time before I respond, I do. So each situation is different. So I've been challenged internally with certain people, with union members, and it's all about building relationships. Again, being inquisitive, asking questions when somebody says something that might be rude or disrespectful or something like that. Challenge them in the moment, just in a way that you lets them know that you kind of hear where they're coming from and you hear what they're doing, and let them respond, let them answer. In terms of, I've actually had a lot of support though through with my community, with a lot of people in my department. I've had a lot of support. But the challenge is, I think, more broadly in terms of women in leadership roles and women of color, and we see it across the nation, is that we're not given the same kind of leeway as our male counterparts. The spotlight is always on us. And I was actually at a memorial a week or so ago, and a former mayor, Willie Brown from San Francisco, said something that really resonated. He said that women are always kind of on the attack if they are doing their job. So it's like, if we are being effective in the work that we're doing, the spotlight is always going to be on us because people are always going to challenge us where they might not do that to men. We don't see them doing that to men as often. But if we make a mistake, it's broadcast everywhere. We don't have the same leeway in terms of, if we make a mistake, then a lot of times we're ousted from our positions, where, a man might make the same mistake or, do something and they get a little bit, a longer rope than we do.
And there's tons of research to back up what you're saying, right? About how the scrutiny is placed on minorities and women, and they're not given the leeway that their white counterparts are given, right? Chances to learn as you're going along, right? So excellent points all around. Thank you, Chief. We're going to move on to Lynn Holland. And Lynn, how has your identity influenced your leadership style and approach to policing? We had a conversation yesterday. There were so many similarities, right, in what we experience, having to overeducate ourselves, having to provide ourselves access to training when it wasn't made available. So how has this influenced your style and approach to leadership?
First of all, I want to say thank you for having me. I can remember when there weren't many panelists in this arena, and I would have really liked to have everyone that's on here be part of my career. When you walk alone, I'm generationally different than the other panelists, and to walk alone and now have other voices to walk with me, it's really powerful to me. Anyway, I thought about this question. I've given quite a lot of thought about it, and I wanted to say I was raised by a mother and father who were prison chaplains. So from my early childhood, I had the privilege of seeing the same career position held by both genders. So when I became a police officer and started to receive promotions, I wanted to strive to be the best leader and not the best female leader. Although the male-dominated profession of law enforcement constantly reminded me that I was a woman and that I may not be equipped to be a great leader. I remember when I was promoted to sergeant at the sheriff's office, I was given a team of officers that I came to realize were all the problem employees in the department. Those couple of years were very difficult, and I know there were many who thought I would fail. But I look back on that experience and realized that dealing with these problem employees equipped me to be a problem solver, and that I could, once I
Oh, I'm listening to a
led
NAWLEE
them,
webinar.
I could lead anyone. And I also would like to give another example internationally. When I was in Kosovo, I had the privilege of leading 14 different countries in my workforce. And I had men come up to me and they said, we've never had a female leader. And I said, well, someone's got to be the first, so I'm it. And I realized that I had to be sensitive to the cultural differences. But what I found out is that if I included everybody in the problems that we had and got their answers to as with solutions, then we had a powerful one combined solution to any problem that we had to deal with. And I realized then that if you have a workforce that is very diverse, it really is very powerful, and that people just want to be valued and to be heard. And I think that as our communities in America become more diverse, as our workforces become more diverse, I think that more chiefs should realize how powerful it can be to have those different viewpoints in solving many of the situations that are going to be coming up in their agencies, in their communities.
Excellent points. And now, what qualities would you say that you have that could be nurtured in other women in leadership roles?
Well, first of all, my faith in God grounds me and provides me a moral compass. And I think we all need that. We need to have a moral compass. Mm-hmm. And learning that work-life balance is difficult, and being a good partner or spouse, mother, and leader or employee may not be achieved all in the same day. Sometimes you're going to hit 2 of them, sometimes you're going to hit 1 of them, and you're never going to hit 3 of them. So if you can realize that, you'll be able to give yourself some grace. Then when you have disappointment and mistakes, you must process it. You must first, I call it get mad, get sad, and get glad. And I think that many of the mistakes and disappointments I've had have made me a greater leader. But I had to process them and not be bitter and not carry around anger, and to get to the side of what am I going to learn from this and how I'm going to improve and how I'm going to be different in the future. And I think I've started a mentoring program for the Empower program, and I'm really excited about that. We are supporting 29 countries. And so I have mentoring is a lifelong process. And I was very blessed early in my career to have only men, because at that time, but at least I had men that were progressive, that were willing to come alongside of me. And I now, I'm proud, I need to give a shout out. We have Major Hoti on here, and she's here from Kosovo, and she's one of my mentees. And so I believe it's a lifelong process, and that you should always be mentored and be willing to be a mentor. And then I think you should walk through every door that is presented to you. You had talked, Yvonne, earlier about how we have to invest in ourselves. Well, I was invited to Scotland Yard to study, and my agency decided to give me the time off. Well, let me take my vacation, but not pay for any of the expenses. Mm-hmm. So I made the hard decision of selling a Trans Am. At that time, that was a coveted car, and invest in me. Changed my life. That was one of the investments that has really paid off in the long run, and I'm grateful that I walked through that door and made that investment. Also, I want to talk about never stop learning. I heard other panelists talk about that, and it is important that you have as much education as you can, and continue to get certifications. Don't ever stop. And another thing I want to talk about is don't burn a bridge, because that person that works for you might end up becoming your boss. And so now sometimes you have to burn a bridge, but if you're going to do that, be very selective and be very deliberate if you have to do that for ethics or moral reasons. And the last thing that I want to leave people with is, if you have a brilliant idea, and a lot of women have some very innovative, brilliant ideas, it won't matter that it's brilliant unless you have the right audience, the right decision maker to present it to, and the right time and funding so that they can go forward with it.
Excellent points about the education. It's so critical to invest in yourself and find avenues to get that training if it's not made available. Sadly, it should be where you're being groomed, but if those aren't offered to you, you have to find ways to provide it for yourself. You mentioned also that there were challenges when you were applying for jobs where the issues of whether you were a wife or a mom came up. How did you navigate that? And has that been a continuous issue throughout your career?
Yeah. When I first was hired, I was asked about how my ex-husband felt about me becoming a police officer. I couldn't believe they asked that question. And then when I started a hostage negotiation team, I was asked about my childcare. And nobody else was asked about their childcare. Right. And so I can tell you, for the last 20 years, I've been the first woman in the position that I've had. Mm-hmm. And it's always surprised me. I've always thought, oh my goodness, you hadn't given another woman that opportunity before. But I have been asked inappropriate questions in my career. It's so much better now. It's not that way. And Issy Tap is just, this is the position I currently have. I feel like God prepared me for my whole life, and this is it. And we are really doing some wonderful things with counterterrorism and affecting, we call it, we are focused on women, but we're inclusive to men. And to be able to go to many countries and to see women have an opportunity to have a voice, just to have a voice, just to be heard, is really quite a privilege.
Thank you so much. So now moving back to our other panelists, Sheriff Corpus, how do you envision the future of policing with respect to diversity and inclusion? Sheriff Corpus.
Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. Can you go ahead and repeat the question one more time, please?
Sure. How do you envision the future of policing with respect to diversity and inclusion and addressing these barriers that we've been discussing throughout the webinar?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incumbent on all of us to continue with making sure that when we are hiring and that when we are out recruiting, and we all know how difficult it is at this point in time with recruitment and with retention as well, that we not only highlight, the need for the diversity, because, depending on where what county or what city your jurisdiction is in, depending on the population and the makeup of the population, you always want your workforce to reflect the communities that we serve, but also to really focus on, the value and the profession of law enforcement, and making sure that we not only have the equity part, the makeup of what our communities look like, but also that, we're hiring people that have that, passion for law enforcement, and that will, not stain our profession. And so I think it's a lot of things, but I also think that, storytelling is so important. And depending on where you are in the country, we have this data that we have to keep putting out, right? The RIPA data. And I think it doesn't tell a story. And I think it's so important for us as law enforcement leaders to tell that story, because we do so much good out there. And I think, you know, the negative is always highlighted. What I can tell you is in, you know, our jails, when I worked in the jail, the population was very different than what it is today. And 50% of our population in our correctional facilities suffer from extreme mental illness. And we have to pivot. And, you know, I think a lot of times the story isn't told about all the good things that we do. And then the, you know, fentanyl is just taking over these individuals. And we're, you know, people are coming in and they're sicker than they've ever been. And so, you know, what I can tell you is that we had we had 2 deaths in custody. You know, one was like on a Friday and the other was a Saturday. And one was, you know, a rather younger man in his 20s who had his mom, he hurt his mom, and his mom, you know, put restraining orders against him, and he went to court and it wasn't favorable for him. And so he hung himself, and he did it at the opportune time when the deputy had just gone to do a welfare check. And then when the deputy went back, saw him and tried to save him, but they couldn't revive him. And then another person was found in his cell alone, and you know, didn't appear that he died in his sleep. But you know, the headlines were, you know, 2 incarcerated people die, you know, back to back, in, you know, at the hands of the sheriff's office. So when we had the report and the autopsy came back, and the findings of the coroner and the DA's office, their investigation, I put out a press release so people will know that what, you know, one was you know, a suicide, and the other was cancer that this individual didn't know that he had. And it made it on like the back page of the newspaper, and it was like a really small little blurb. And so, you know, I think that's why it's so important for us to storytell, to show that we are doing really good things. And then when we make mistakes, that we, you know, put it out there and we say we made a mistake. But you know, for me, it is really important, not only for the equity part, but to showcase, you know, all the good things that we do. And then when we do, you know, something that may not be the right thing, then we are transparent about it, but then we also, you know, talk about how we're changing it, right? So it doesn't happen again. So.
Thank you, Sheriff. So I want to say also that we have to acknowledge strides that have been made, right? And I want to point out that you weren't appointed by an elected official, that you were elected, right? So that in itself shows that the communities are welcoming of some people that look like them, that have their ideas, that espouse their values. So very inspiring, the fact that you're an elected official, right? So thank you. We'll now move on to Chief French. Chief, what advice would you give young women of color aspiring to leadership roles in law enforcement based on your own trajectory?
Sure. So just like, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the first panelist.
Goss, yeah, Chief Goss from North
Chief
Miami.
Goss. Yeah, she talked about, you know, putting yourself out there, making sure that, you know, and also Ms. Holland, Chief Holland, talked about making sure that you put yourself out there, you do, you know, you go out for different positions that you might not have gone out for. You don't want to be in a position where there's a promotional opportunity, but they say that you're not qualified because you didn't do this or you didn't do that. So several panelists talked about how education is key. I truly believe that you never stop learning. I am a chief. There's nowhere else in terms of where I can go here in my agency, but I continue to learn. I continue to read. I continue to educate myself on things that are going on, because I think that education is important. But I think that some of the key things are making sure that you connect yourself with people that you trust, that can help you along the way, that can answer the questions and won't make fun of you, or, that you just build that trust with, and they're your go-to person or go-to people. And that doesn't always have to be in this field. It doesn't have to be someone else in law enforcement. A lot of my mentors are outside of this profession, but when you get into leadership roles, leadership is leadership. Yeah, there's some things unique to our profession, but there's leadership qualities kind of are the same across the board. Another thing is, you can't be afraid to have difficult conversations. And I think that's one of the things that has helped me the most in my role, is that I have been willing to have those crucial conversations with people. They know where I'm coming from. I'm honest and transparent in what I do. And so when they can trust you, and even if they don't agree with what you're saying, what you're doing, at least they know where you're coming from. They kind of know what to expect. And they know that it could go to you for true and honest feedback, and you're not going to hold back. And I'm not saying you do it in a way that, is going to make them go away feeling defeated. But you give people honest feedback, because it does no good. It does our agencies no good. For us to talk about somebody and their deficiencies and how they might be messed up behind their back, but not go to them and tell them. It's not fair to that person. It's not fair to our agencies. And I've seen this throughout my career, not only in my own agency, but, other agencies too, is that a lot of people know the people that are challenged and need help. But a lot of people don't go to that person directly and say, hey, this is what I see, you need help with, and I'm willing to help you. Let me know what you need, or this is what I think can help you. But just making sure that you're putting people first.
And I think that's so important. Those are qualities that we often associate with the value that women bring into policing. And a lot of what you said has to do with addressing the culture, right? By modeling what you expect and meeting people on a human level. So I love all the points that you have made. Have you found that relationship building is important in your leadership role? And how accessible do you make yourself to your staff and personnel?
Absolutely. Relationship building is, I think, one of the key components, especially in leadership roles. I think many other chiefs will tell you that it's critically important, because if you don't have support, we call it the three-legged stool. If you don't have support from your community, if you don't have support from your department, or you don't have support for your city council or whoever governs you, then you're destined to fail. If two of those things are missing, a stool can't stay upright, or even if one of those things are missing, it's difficult to stay upright. So it's always important to have those relationship building with city council, community, and internally. Unfortunately, I've seen this with our last chief, where there was some dissension between our rank and file and the chief, and he had a vote of no confidence, and that's actually how I became the interim chief. And so I saw that, and as it played out, and know how crucial it is for those relationships in every way. And one can't lack. Like, you can't just leave your department to the side and just focus on the community. Our officers, we talk about procedural justice. You have to practice procedural justice internally just as you do externally. And so relationship building is truly one of the key components in leadership and law enforcement.
So very important. Thank you. And a final question for Lynn Holland. So you're a senior law enforcement advisor. You have relationships throughout the world through your work with the United Nations. So you've seen a lot. Where do you envision policing to be in 20 years from now, not only nationally, but internationally?
I'm very excited. I'm very optimistic. And for this reason, our communities in America are becoming more diverse. And that will force the workforce in law enforcement to become more diverse. And so as that happens, I think we will be able to meet the needs of the community by the workforce being able to relate to the community. We need to be aware that how our communities were 20 years ago is not where they are going to be 20 years ahead. And so I'm very optimistic and very excited. I am so grateful for the 30 by 30 initiative that will push forward diversity and what NAWLEE does for diversity and other organizations. And so to see the changes that have happened, and I am starting to see workforce looking a lot different than it did when I first started in law enforcement in the 80s. And so I'm very optimistic, and I think that it's important that chiefs embrace the communities that they're going to have and have an understanding of the cultures so that they can be more powerful in providing security for each and every one of the diverse and underrepresented populations that we're going to be having in the future.
Thank you. Sheriff Corpus, same question. Where do you envision policing in the next generation, right? The people that we're leaving behind us.
Yeah, I mean, as the chief said, I'm so excited because I do see that, you know, we're making that extra effort and that stride to really, you know, bring more diversity and equity to law enforcement. And, you know, it's exciting, and it's overdue. You know, as you can, like my fellow panelists, there's some amazing women on this panel that have broken that glass ceiling, right? That we talk about. It is imperative that we do that because we do have to have representation. We do have to have a seat at the table. And in order to bring change and culture change to law enforcement, you know, we need to be there and be present. So I am excited. I think we just keep moving, keep pushing the needle forward. And I do see law enforcement moving in a different direction, where, you know, we're not so traditional anymore and we're serving our community members differently, but also, you know, taking care of each other. I think that's so important, especially with, you know, everything that we see on a daily basis, and bringing awareness to mental health issues within our own ranks is really important. So I see us being more supportive to one another, networking more, and really pushing for more equity within the ranks, and you know, pushing women and people of color, you know, that wouldn't think that they would ever have a career in law enforcement. And it's so needed, and I'm so excited about it. And, you know, I'm so happy to have been on the panel today. And I want to thank everyone and thank the esteemed panel as well.
Thank you, Sheriff. And I'm so glad you brought up the issue of representation, right? You really, it's challenging to imagine something that you haven't seen before. So when I became a police officer, the highest ranking person was a lieutenant, a woman. She was a lieutenant. So I said, I want to be a lieutenant, right? Because no one like us existed. So that's why it's so very important to highlight people like you and the rest of our panelists who have been those first people, so that the idea can be planted into the next generation. Chief French, where do you envision policing being in the next 20 years?
Sure. So I'm just excited about the future of policing, just like the other panelists. Diversity and inclusion are key components in increasing trust and legitimacy in our communities. And that's why I think it's so important for initiatives like the 30 by 30, because it gives us a framework, not only for just increasing the workforce as it relates to women, but those of us that are trying to increase diversity in our agencies with race. And so having a diverse and inclusive workforce helps us to be more creative in addressing the safety in our communities, because of the different perspectives that people bring, people with diverse backgrounds bring. So when you're able to relate to someone that you're responding to in a culturally competent way, the more effective that will be. So building on that diversity and inclusion, and I think just in the future, as we continue to grow, it's only going to increase our effectiveness in our partnerships with the communities that we serve.
Thank you so much. And I'm really so excited to have been on this panel today. Thank you all for participating and agreeing to share your stories with us and the audience. Because as we said, representation does matter, right? You have to be able to have role models that you can emulate. It's been an enlightening webinar, and I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of our distinguished panelists for their invaluable insights. Shout out to Maureen, a co-founder of 30 by 30, who is in the audience watching. She and I could not have imagined how far we would get in 3 short years. And it's because of partners like you that have made it possible, that have led the way. So your engagement and contributions have made such a rich and inspiring experience today to honor International Women's Day. Hopefully, the trailblazing journeys that we've shared inspire a continued passion for leadership, equality, and excellence in law enforcement in other women and in our communities at large. So thank you for being a part of this crucial conversation. To close us out, I'm going to hand it over to our Director of Gender Equity, Tanya. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to end by saying, thank you to everyone. It's such a pleasure to have you all here. And Chief Goss, Chief French, Chief Holland, Sheriff Corpus. What an amazing panel. So many incredible thoughts and lessons to be taken away. And I think this type of event and hearing from you is what makes this work so exciting and so important, is being able to have the perspective of so many other women and people in law enforcement. So I can't thank you enough for joining us today and being part of this. And then lastly, to our co-founders, Yvonne and Mo, what an incredible 3 years. We couldn't have done any of this without you, and we're so thankful for both of you that you're here continuing this work. And also a shout out to our friends at NAWLEE. And everyone have a fabulous rest of Women's History Month as we continue to celebrate and move forward with women in policing.